if you're not familiar already with Deb, she's basically an expert in marketing, branding, advertising, all those different kind of components. And she's the founder of Plug and Play SM, which is literally a social media marketing company. And you have different, you can kind of go into that, but everything from like just giving you the skeleton of what to do to like totally done for you type services. So she's really knowledgeable in all these different kinds of fields, and she's got a lot of expertise in lending specifically, but obviously the real estate space as a whole. And if you're in another industry, I think a lot of it's going to be transferable too. So I'll just kind of pass things off to Deb and let her take it from here.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate you coordinating and putting all of this together, as I know, it's a little rough out there to say the least. And there is a big difference between having a true lender partner versus just a vendor. And we were kind of talking about that before we got on. And I think this just says a lot about you, where this is obviously something that's meant to help those who watch really grow their business. I think selfishly, if anyone generates business off this, I'm sure Brandon would love your leads, but I just thank you for not being the average LO and caring enough about your partners during this time when it may be a cold winter, guys, but this class will help, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I really call this, and again, I'll kind of share my screen and I'll go back and forth. But I titled this Social Media Marketing on Offense because what I have found is, one, in the fourth quarter, this is when we're all kind of putting, the full court press on with people. And this is a great time to take market share. But there's a difference between doing social and kind of being on defense, and we just kind of post and ghost, or we post and we hope that we get likes or followers. And instead of being like pleasantly aggressive, I'll just say, to go hunt and get the business and create our market. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And I also just want to highlight something that you said in the intro, that I think sometimes when people hear the word marketing, they get it confused with there's marketing, there's branding, there's advertising, and then there's sales. And so marketing helps create the attention or create the need, but sales still has to help people with the decision and convert. And so sometimes those who are running ads, like we used to really be really big in running ads, but the challenge became, as the ads became more effective when people would go to Messenger, you really needed the system and the process or a CRM to nurture those leads. And you'd have to work on your scripting and your follow-up and your touches to then be able to convert. So for some, it's a lead problem. For some, they don't have a lead problem. It's a lead conversion, or maybe it's just follow-up. But regardless, go ahead and make sure that you're following Plug and Play SM on social media. It's on Instagram, it's plug and play underscore SM, but you'll see every single day I'm committed to creating educational content that, as often as interest rates change in a day, it's almost as often as algorithms. So I want to make sure you guys stay on that education train with me. And, there's a lot of things that you can gain just from following me on social. So I feel like we have to start, and yes, I'm including Deion Sanders because I am riding that train. I'm a huge fan. I actually went to Colorado this past weekend and attended their last home game, but he's such a great example of how he's really changing the game of college football and doing like the unthinkable, where people, they haven't been winning here lately, but at least from a mindset and culture, like culture is the ultimate strategy. But why I really put them on here is because I feel like when I'm talking to loan officers or even real estate agents, and I go and I speak all over, and I'll have big rooms full of sometimes mega teams and top producers, and sometimes solo agents that are still, top producers. And the ones that are producing at a high level, they understand that the market should always dictate your marketing. So if you're still running plays that you ran 2 years ago, they're not going to work in today's market, and they shouldn't, because part of the art in bringing value and relevance is driven by market needs. And so, the challenges today are very different than what they were 2 years ago. I still think both were hard. Like, a lot of people like to talk about how right now is extremely hard. But for those of you who were at least in business 2 years ago, that was a different kind of hard. Like it was mass chaos. It was submitting offers, sometimes sight unseen, waiving all contingencies, multiple offers. You're trying to help your sellers decipher like which one to take. It was like max volume. Um, but I will say when I go and I speak to others, I have also been asking them, like, tell me what's really working right now. Like no BS. Don't sell me on a course. I want to know, what are y'all doing differently? How are you? Because some are having their best years ever. So I'm like, what is it that you're doing? Or where is your business coming from? Like, shoot me straight. And they all said sphere of influence, all of them, like the ones that were at the top. And so I started to think about that. I'm like, if it's sphere of influence and we know that, then how is it? Because I remember there was a NAR stat that said 89% of customers said they would use their agent again, but only 12% actually do. So I'm like, this number doesn't match up if you guys are all saying it's your sphere of influence. So I partnered with a company and we did further research on this. And what we found is the elite performers had a 4 times better client retention rate. So it was about 46% of repeat or referral business versus the average agent that was just 12%. So my first question to you guys is, how bulletproof is your follow-up system, your client nurturing system? What are the different channels that you maybe market to them? Social media is one aspect of it, but there's email marketing, which is really effective. Believe it or not, mailers can still be really effective. And so um, essentially, I want you guys to get obsessed with maintaining your customer relationships, not just closing and never talking to them again, because there is so much. In fact, I will say that's probably the biggest expense in y'all's business today. A lot of times you may think it's maybe the leads that you're buying or even commission splits, but it's missed opportunity a lot of times. And that's very costly if you think about how many clients you either met with for a listing presentation or a buyer consultation that probably went ahead and bought or sold without you. Like obviously there's going to be some fallout that maybe they just decide to wait, but there's probably some that still decided to buy or sell and they didn't use you. So why? Was it because you got beat out by somebody else and there were multiple interviews? When data reveals most people only interview the first person. And I do think that's because of social proof, and we'll get into that in a minute. Um, but imagine if, even if it was just maybe 5 deals this year, you dollarize that with your average commission. That's a big chunk of money that went out the door because we didn't have that bulletproof system around our database. So with that said, yes, having a CRM and some kind of management of how are we constantly finding ways to acquire new contacts that we can add to our database and nurture. What I would like for you guys to consider is social media is really just an extension to your CRM. And it's because that's where the human attention is. And I'm not saying this because I'm trying to like sell social media because I own a social media marketing company. I only own a social media marketing company because that is where human attention is. When you look at how much time people spend on the platforms, it's actually kind of crazy. Like the average US American, 18 years and older, spends 8.5 hours a day on all digital media on their phone. Like, and a good exercise that you guys can do, we won't go through the whole thing here, but I would not recommend you do this with a spouse, but with your teams, especially if you have those of you who lead teams, you may have people constantly tell you they don't have time. So a way to track your time is if you go to the settings, and this is on an iPhone. For Android users, I think it's called family sharing. But if you go to settings and scroll to the third block and you go to battery, it will then give you like 2 different bar graphs. And if you click last 10 days, and then right below the blue bars, it'll say average active screen time. Mine says 8 hours and 48 minutes. And then worse, it gives you your top of where you're spending your time. And so I usually do this when I'm on stage with big groups because I always have people who tell me, I just hate social media. I hate it. I don't like it. I don't have time for it. I don't get it. And so when we do this exercise and I have people call out like what was their average time, this lady who was like, I didn't even want to be here. I had to be here, but I hate social media. Her average screen time was 14 hours a day, and she had 2 social mediums in her top 3 apps. And I'm like, so what that tells me is you're letting social media use you And I mean, they're meant to feed the addiction, guys. They are. Like, that's how they're designed. But you could be using it intentionally for business, for prospecting, for lead nurturing, for database protection. Like, it is how we build a brick wall, because that's the best place to stay top of mind, since we know that's where the eyeballs are. So usually people then say, well, where do I even begin? Like, I call it WTF, and it's not WTF of what it's traditionally stands for. It's where to focus. Because what I don't want, and I know that social media can sometimes be distracting. And so I don't want you getting on the platforms and allowing it to use you, and you just are a consumer. I want you to flip the script and be on offense and be a producer. So WTF is meant, okay, if there's so many platforms and maybe you don't have support on social yet, where you have other people helping you, then where do you focus your time? So we have to go off of what the data says. It's not my opinion. And I will say, whatever your opinions are of social, try to remove that emotional attachment and just fixate on, we know this is where human eyeballs are. Like, average American just on social is 4.5 hours a day. So if 8.5 hours is all digital media, social's really replaced TV. Like, the day of the scrolling, in fact, most people are still on Netflix or Hulu, and yet they're still scrolling on social. So it is definitely where we can stay top of mind if we're strategic. So let's look at the giants first, because I want y'all to know, if I have to focus on a few platforms, which one, Deborah, should I focus on? Well, if you're looking at total number of users, then the giants are Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Facebook's not really surprising because it's the oldest, although they are losing traction. But according to user count, these are the giants of where most people are logging in on a daily basis. Now, also know that in a month time, most, again, adults in America, and I always look at America data. I don't want the globe, because most of us depend on business in the US, which the other, like, global data can be misleading because it may not be completely accurate. But most people are on 7 different platforms in a month. So that's why it does require an omni approach or multi-channel approach, that, although I will say I still think you need to be everywhere on all the platforms every day, I don't think you should be physically. And there's tools that I can show you of how to maximize one post where you're not having to do all the posting for yourself. Um, but from a user standpoint, these are the rankings. Now, from a time spent on the app, which is very different, and a lot of people don't differentiate between the two. People, when they log on to TikTok, that's number one. They spend the most amount of time, almost an hour a day, on TikTok. Then there's YouTube, which is number two, which is 48 minutes. And then there's Twitter and Instagram. So there's kind of a pattern here. And I will say the TikTokification of how much TikTok has changed human behavior, of like how people consume now. Like, we're all so used to the vertical video of the scroll, and we want like quick to the point information. This should help give you a little bit of focus, that if you're going to do some of the engagement strategies that I'm going to share with you, this should help angle where to spend majority of your time. Now, that doesn't mean, just because LinkedIn is down here, it doesn't mean not to be on LinkedIn. But again, you can just tell this may be one that people aren't spending that much time on, and it doesn't have as many users just yet. Now, that also means there could be some underpriced attention, and I know a lot of people think of LinkedIn as B2B, but isn't every B possibly C also at some point, So let's dive in. Now that we know a little bit of kind of WTF, where to focus, I want to then go into what I call step one of the content creation phase, or when you're approaching social media, you have to have a strategy. Without a strategy, it can be very overwhelming, because there's so much you could say or post that then it's almost like when you go to the gym and you're like, there's so many machines. Where do I even start? But if you know that Mondays are back and by, and Tuesdays are chest and try, and Wednesdays cardio, so you're always sick on Wednesdays, because who likes cardio? Just kidding. But at least giving yourself some focused content pillars will help you make sure that you encompass all possible parts of the business. So For starters, and I did this more for the mortgage and real estate space, what you see here in purple are your main content pillars. This is what's working right now. So you'll see in purple, these are the main content pillars, and then underneath them are just like subcategories of what you could do. So I like to theme the days. To me, theming the days just makes a lot more sense in my head. And when you're thinking of ideation, you need a systematic way throughout the week that is easy for you to integrate into your lifestyle and the fact that you aren't full-time content creators. So I understand, like, we've got to make this integrate in an easy way. What I have found is if every Monday you set up a reoccurring non-negotiable appointment with yourself, like this is a mandatory meeting that you'll bring a couple different shirts. And for the ladies on the call, like maybe this is when you do your hair and makeup, and the other days you may look homeless because you're not, meeting people, whatever. Bring a couple different tops, but that's your video recording time or your creation time. I never want you to do ideation and creation on the same day because then it can get overwhelming. So the systematic way throughout the week that you can create the idea list. So that's what I have here. Like imagine if these words weren't written here, this brain dump of ideas. For some of my clients, they use just the notes section of their phone, where as they're consuming throughout the week, if there's something that they see that they like, they will write it down on their idea list, or a question that someone asked either before, during, or after the transaction. They write the question down that they're getting. Any misbeliefs that are currently like in the news. Essentially, you want a one-stop like dump of all your ideas so that when you show up on Monday, you just go straight to your idea list. And that way it's an easy way for you to be like, okay, I really like that. I'm going to put that on my idea list because I know come Monday, I will now have a bank of things that I can choose from. And you'll start to see your idea list gets longer and longer and longer. And then it makes it easy to fill them in. Okay, what am I going to post when based off my content pillars? So Mondays, I typically make it more market updates. Like most people, they're like very interested in the housing market, even if they're not even in the market to buy or sell. And I usually break this down to maybe having more national news to then local news, because people sometimes hear both and they could misunderstand that just because nationally these are some of the averages, you have to look at, what's going on here locally. Like I know you guys are in California, so obviously that's going to be very different than like Mississippi, especially on price points and loan amounts. So it's important to make sure that you're utilizing some of the news to do news hacking stories. And an easy way to do that is, if you guys aren't familiar with the green screen effect that's built in to most of the mediums. So, Instagram, Facebook, just I'll start there since most people are on those. It's really pretty easy to use the green screen effect. And I have a YouTube video on that I can always send to Brandon, when you guys send him your next lead. Just kidding. That would be arrest violation, probably. I can say that, right? Brandon didn't tell me to say that. But, if you guys need help with that,
I'll
that is
I'll
one.
definitely send it out though, because that's super helpful
Yeah.
for people to have.
I mean, think about it. If you set up a Google alert and you know that every Monday is a market update or is a news hack, you could easily just screenshot that article and then use it. And you just give your narrative around whether you agree or disagree. Just have an opinion. And I think it's okay for people to know an expert opinion doesn't mean perfect. Like there's not one economist that has gotten it right every single time. So, you know, Mondays, think market update. Tuesdays, I call it prove it. Um, and this, what I mean by this is, what are those top 3 things that you usually tell clients, whether it's a listing appointment or buyer consultation, whatever it is, why should they use you? What do you say? It could be your experience, that you care, communication, whatever it is, but you know that a lot of people say those 3. That's why they came to mind. Or I help people, build wealth through real estate. Know that whatever your unique value proposition is, if everybody else is saying the same one, then it doesn't mean it's unique anymore. But regardless, I want you to think of Tuesdays of, how do I prove that I am who I say I am and that I will do what I say I'll do? Because talk is cheap now. Like we've all seen, there's a lot of talking head videos out there. And, you know, again, we were discussing this a little bit right before the call, that the default is almost to distrust, because marketers can, believe it or not, like we do overdo it. And we can do those great hooks that are like bait and switch that people click, and it's like lose 100 pounds in 2 seconds by taking this pill, and you're disappointed because it didn't work. So people are skeptical. I think also because of COVID and the election, like people don't always believe what they see or hear anymore. And so they want you to almost prove it. So this is your opportunity to create that transparency of a resume, so to speak, that gives you credibility, but it's got to be authentic and real, because now with, the evolution of just anyone behind a keyboard could literally say whatever they want about you or be like, oh, they say this, but they don't actually do that. You've got to make sure that it's on brand and it's authentic and it's real, because people, the days of like lying or secrets with marketing, that is long gone. And we saw that just in the early 90s with, McDonald's, and how the employees would reveal like what's really going on in the batter. And it's just people have freedom to now expose the truth. So prove it could be like a screenshot of you guys. I mean, it could be power washing a driveway or cleaning a toilet before an open house because the darn sellers didn't clean up like you had asked them to. So you're having to do, all the difficult parts that most people don't see because they think, real estate agents, it's just sunset shows and HGTV and like, glammed up with fancy cars and whatnot, but that's not necessarily reality. So if you say it's that you care, how do you prove that? Show me the evidence. That's what Tuesdays are for. It's also your day of like like show me how, if you're a loan officer like Brandon, it's like, okay, well, show me the strategy of buying the home. Maybe it's, instead of doing a price reduction, we do a seller concession so that we can attract more buyers and solve the home affordability part. But that takes validity of content to put graphic with your words, because otherwise it becomes lip service and everyone's thinking in their head, they're thinking, of course you're telling me it's a good time to buy or sell. You get paid every time I do. So they're thinking, I've never met a loan officer or agent say it's not a good time to buy. So how do you prove your words with data or images or other economist charts that validates what you're saying? Wednesdays are the most effective, but least implemented. I don't know why. It's kind of what Brandon and I are doing right now. This is what you could do. You set up either Zoom or team chat, and you collaborate and you look for who are other industry leaders or like-minded business professionals that you could interview by hosting a show. And I would make it the same day and time every week. So maybe it's every Wednesday at noon, and it could be a family law attorney of like, let's talk about, you always make them the hero. So it's a, informal Q&A, and you'll ask a little bit about how did you get into this industry? What made you, specialize in family law? Let's talk about the things that most people don't consider when buying or selling real estate. And the whole goal is to build that a reason for the community to still follow you after the close. Because otherwise, most people make content that's only for those who are raising their hand saying, I'm interested, but they forget to love on the ones that have already chosen you. So again, this is part of building a community and putting a brick wall around your database by providing value that doesn't always have to be you. It's interviewing other professionals, and now you're the digital mayor of the community, and you're connecting people to other professionals that not only is that professional going to thank you, but also the community. And the holy grail to this is when you make your post and maybe you slice up that interview or you put it on YouTube, and then you have some smaller 15-second clips from it. When you invite them as a collaborator, which first of all, I mean, even most attorneys, like they look at this as you're interviewing them for like TV. They tell their mom, their dad, they email their entire database. Like, I'm going live. If you do it live, like you've got to tune in. Like they get really excited. I think people forget mortgage and real estate. We're kind of like up and up on marketing. So giving them a space to tell their story or what made them open up the new restaurant in town, or even when it was Veterans Day, interviewing a veteran. But when you tag them and they put it on their feed, now you're adopting their trusted following. And that's a way to grow your exposure and reach and following by someone else's credibility. So that's why Wednesdays, it does take prospecting of who do you want to interview, but it also becomes fun because you'll be like maybe at a new venue and you'll be like, oh, I wonder who manages this place. I'd love to have them on my show. And it gives you a reason to reach out. I had DM'd Mike Simonson with Altos Research, and I was like, there's no way he's going to respond to me, because every Friday we do a show And I was like, holy shit, he responded. He wants to, like, for free. I'm always like, this is for free. Are you sure you want it? And he said yes. And then I also DM'd Phil M. Jones. So I don't know if you guys have heard of Phil M. Jones. He's the author of Exactly What to Say. It's a great book. There's a real estate edition, 7-time best-selling author. And I was like, I bet he won't respond. And I was like, oh my gosh, he responded. So, Wednesdays, just kind of think bigger, whatever would be valuable to your community. Know that sometimes it's just a DM away, and some people will say yes because it's easy, it's virtual. You don't have to have like a podcast studio. It could be just like this. Thursdays, I usually those are like testimonial days, but what I prefer is for you to turn that testimonial into a story where you're telling a story. What was that client's challenge? Even if it's you maybe interviewing a client that bought 2 years ago, who was that nervous Nelly that was a renter, and everyone and their dog was telling them, "Are you crazy to buy right now? Like, don't go 50,000 above list price. Like, that's insane. You should never pay above market value for a home." But they made the leap of faith and they bought the home. And imagine if you interviewed them today and you're like, "Hey, aren't you glad you made that decision? Like, you should be proud of yourself. Had you waited, like what a lot of people are doing right now, you would have been at 8% rates and, the home would have been priced at this point. Like, what advice do you have for others who are listening right now who may be on the fence about buying?" And if it doesn't always have to come from you, but people do latch on to stories and it plants a seed and they're like, huh, that's my sister. I'm going to send this to my sister. And that's what we're seeing more of. Like, the human behaviors of likes and comments and follows are drastically down. So if you've noticed that just within your own content, that's one from a behavioral metric across all channels. It's not your marketing. It's people have become lazy because they now expect you to be on social. It's like we don't get hand claps anymore for being on social. But what we are seeing is there's more DMs being shared, especially by the younger generations, a day than there are posts being made. So even those who aren't like they're consumers and they don't produce, they don't post, but they are sending things in the DMs like crazy. So you can't always assume that your content isn't working if your only judgment is likes, comments, or follows. Likewise, when people go to your account, which is what we typically see, the path is they're given your name. And just by looking at the NAR data of last year, most real estate agents, they get their business from word of mouth referrals or past clients. But we are so trained to now go to social and look for social proof. Now, most people are not going to follow you that time because they're thinking, I would look like a creeper. They're going to know before I contacted them that I was creeping on their account and now I'm following them and I'm exposing myself. And people care about your approval, believe it or not. So it's important that every call, even if they haven't agreed to list with you yet, I would still say, hey, before we get off the phone, I'm going to go ahead and send you a friend request, or I'm going to go ahead and follow you. Do me a favor, check and make sure that you got it. Go ahead and follow me back. So telling them and planting the seed gives them permission where now they feel like it's okay. And you could say a similar thing like I did with, because every week we're committed to providing educational value. And I want to make sure that, if you have that 2 a.m. freak out moment, like some home buyers or sellers do, then you can get information quickly just by possibly looking at our social feed. If not, you can always schedule whatever. But we've got to get diligent with acquiring people to our database on social. So that's Thursdays. Fridays, I like to do more financial literacy because of what I said earlier about not only are the human behaviors of likes and comments down, but also most of these platforms are now really good at making it interest based. So everyone has their own set of DNA and it's preying on what you show you're interested in. Well, then you have to ask yourself, do you think people are more interested or less interested right now in today's market in buying or selling real estate? Less interested, because we all know this. So you have to understand that if you're only talking about mortgage and real estate, you're competing with 5,300 other posts every second. Why would the algorithms push your, real estate strategy when there's not enough interest by the people following you or just in even your area, even if they were going to put it on the Explore feed? not a lot of people are showing interest in that. And there's too much competition right now. So I'm going to show you how we can flip the script and we can go on offense of how to grow visibility by design and not just by default. And then Saturdays, I always say is more, personal posts, like who are you beyond just an agent? Like people want to know a little bit about your character. Like if you're a mom and I'm a mom now, I feel like we have something in common. So I trust you. Um, you know, if you're following my Deborah A. Byrd Instagram account, I even put in the bio, like follow at your own risk, because there is no strategy to that account. It is whatever comes to my head. I post and I call that my art. It's like my expression. It's my therapy sometimes, but people get a sense of who I am a little bit, good or bad. And know that your social should repel those who aren't part of your tribe and attract those who you do want to do business with. That's an effective, like we're not trying to be vanilla. And then Sundays, I say, are thought leadership. And it can be thought leadership or a comical meme, because those are the most commonly shared pieces of content. So you'll know that like these 3 days, it's a little bit broader, where even like the financial literacy, someone could be researching credit because they're about to buy a car. It's not necessarily just for home buying, but so you could capture some people's attention based off interest by going a little bit broader in at least one of your pillars that may impact their decision before they even know they're ready to buy or sell. So hopefully this helps you with the whole step one of ideation. If you've got to have a content calendar to give yourself some area of focus of what to post, going to be effective. Anything before I go on, Brandon? Are we good? Any questions from anybody?
For me, I think it's really clear. The when you talked about like a comical meme, I think that's like a really important, like both personal things, like you said, like hey, you're with your kids and they're playing a sport or something, you connect with people that way. But like a lot of people are going on to social, I feel like, to an escape. And I catch myself
Yes.
like all I post is like things about my business or, like
Mhm.
what I have coming up or what we can offer to somebody or something like that. And if like even like I did one of those like spirit costume things where you like
Uh-huh.
make your own like joke out of it, and that got more interaction than anything because people are on there like kind of looking for a laugh. So I think
Yes.
that's awesome that that's like included in like the weekly thing to share. It's something I'm gonna incorporate for sure.
And it's funny because I have some clients that get mad at us when we create funny memes, and I'm like, dude, this is funny. Like this, I know this is gonna kill it. Like I'm still laughing and refreshing my own, TikToks where I'm like, I'm just checking for the sixth time to make sure I'm still funny because I'm still laughing at it. Um, but you're right, like people are when their motive for social is to be a little bit entertained, it's also to learn. Um, that is why I like YouTube, where people's motive to YouTube is usually to stay a little longer. Like it's a different motive, but people are looking to escape. So, take your own inventory of what do you like to see. And, if you're only posting about mortgage or real estate, then, and people aren't interested in that, then you can be you know, tuned out. Now, there are two different strategies when it comes to, because a lot of people ask me, should I have two accounts? And I'm like, well, it depends on your goal. If you are someone that is like really trying to disrupt the scroll, which is very hard right now, but then you have to be very clear to the algorithms. And there's 4 algorithms, not just one. I know a lot of people refer to one, but there's the story algorithm, reels, newsfeed, explore feed. They're all different. But regardless, you'd have to be very clear and consistent of every single post, from the caption to the title to the hook to the graphic, that it is targeting an audience, where I would do less personal stuff in memes and I would do more of that on your stories, not the feed, because you're trying to tell the algorithm who you want as a suggested post to get that post. So if they're following, say, realtor.com, how similar is your account to realtor.com, where it would show up as a suggested account? Now, for most, they're not really they're not looking to interrupt the scroll because most of their business comes from referrals, so they know it's more for social proof. If that's the case, then by all means, like I'm not a huge fan of having more than like 2 or 3 branded posts in a row. Even like branded, and then do a reel that looks like, it could be professionally edited, but still it is of you, so it's live and it kind of breaks up the feed so it doesn't feel too corporate, because the moment it feels too corporate and it's perfectly polished, branded posts, and I know for the women on this call, it can be really hard for us because we want it to aesthetically look a certain way, and we get obsessed about that with the brand colors and all of that. But if people think it's too corporate, they may think it's a company doing it for you, and then they don't engage. Because they're like, well, I don't know if this is Deborah. Is she the one doing plug and play? Like, I don't want to engage. It could be somebody else doing it. So everything we do is very intentional of the psychology behind, why people do what they do and how do they consume. And like, I'm the creeper at the airport that literally like films people. Yes, that's me. Because I like to watch them. Like, they pick up their phone, they immediately go to text messages if they have any, or missed calls, and then they go to social. And which social medium do you think they pick first? The one with a notification. So you'll see, and I'll just go ahead and fast forward to that because this is one way that you can get business like today. If you just did this one thing, it's a cluster of things. I call them lightweight touches. If you got really good at doing this every day for 20 minutes a day, it takes 20 minutes. The men on the call, that's your morning poo session. Since you guys take so long in that bathroom, you could literally do this during that time. It's 20 minutes. But if you do these things, it one tells the algorithms you guys have a relationship with people, so you will naturally be seen more. But it's also because we know that most are obsessed with who's liked my stuff. And so they go, literally, they have every social medium, but they're going to pick the one, not always their favorite one, but ooh, I see a red dot. So I'm going to now click it and see, who liked or who commented. So these are those lightweight touches. If you want to take a screenshot of this, you can take a screenshot. But the goal is every day you follow 20 new accounts. People are like, 20? Like, where am I supposed to get 20? Every lead, every past client, anyone who's even referred to you, every CPA on a tax return, every divorce attorney on a divorce decree. For you, Brandon, it's like every offer submission to a listing agent that you call and give your lender recommendation, you're adding them to your database. It's creeping on your competitors. Who's commenting on your competitors' post? Go to the Facebook groups. Like, this is how you, again, build that brick wall. And we're doing this on offense. So instead of you waiting for people to just follow, if you follow 20 new accounts a day, what are the odds that any of them follow you back? Do you think? Like, let's just say worst case, a quarter of them. Now you are like sniper mode, hand selecting who you want to follow you back so that it's not just this, what do they call it? Like spray and pray or whatever that saying is. It's like, I don't need everybody to follow me. And some people get so fixated on those metrics that I'm like, you do know that hopefully I'm not the only one that gets these DMs, but like, you can pay $50 and get 50,000 followers if that's all you care about. It's the worst thing you can do for your analytics. And then some people who are quote gurus, because I have a tool that can detect like what's being bought, and people will buy likes, they buy views, they buy comments, and they buy followers because they want to appear to be a big deal. I say, screw that, be a big deal to the right people, and let's be on offense, and let's make our market, and let's protect our database instead of just sitting and waiting and hoping that someone's just going to magically follow us when most people don't. But if you start, they will follow you back usually. So 20 new accounts every day. I want you to then do 20 likes and 20 comments on other accounts. And those other accounts need to be of your highest influence of people. And I recommend you put them in what's called a favorites feed. Most people don't know you can do this on Instagram and Facebook, but you could. So think of like, maybe it's that Facebook mom that you helped buy or sell, and they're in every Facebook mom group that if they're ever asked for a referral of an agent, they're always tooting your horn. That would be someone of high influence. Or maybe it's a, head of recruiting who recruits, doctors or lawyers, and they help people relocate. Like, again, anyone who could be or is a referral source or has high influence, you would want to put into your favorites. Because when you log in for your 20-minute engagement session, you're going to change your view. Once you, like, you guys could all, if you look at Plug and Play SM, if you're following me, or Brandon, you'll see For Instagram, it'll say following. You just tap following and you'll say add to favorites. So then now when you click on the logo, you can change your view. And nobody knows, by the way, if they're in your favorites. They don't know if they've been removed from your favorites. It's not like close friends where you can post things and only they see it. But the goal is I do realize this can be a distraction. Like once I tell you to get on social, like this is meant for prospecting, okay, and marketing, not entertainment. So if we're using it during work times, then you change your view to favorite, and now it'll only show you those that you have deemed a favorite. So you can be super intentional with your likes and your comments instead of just scrolling endlessly. And then you get a notification and then you go here and it can be, you know, at that point, then it costs you time. So we're trying to, again, this is during our prospecting time. So after you do your 20 likes and comments, I prefer when you do 20 DMs, I prefer these to be on story comments because that way it feels less cold than just sliding into the DMs where sometimes you can go into the requested inbox if you're not already following each other. So let that be kind of some insight for you that if you're consistently posting on your stories, that gives people permission to engage with you in an easy way because they could comment, they could laugh at a post. And so that the whole goal is to create curiosity to start these never ending conversations thanks to social. So 20 DMs. And then this is just like, I thought this was common sense, but I've learned from logging into so many accounts, even the ones that complain, like they'll be like, I only got 3 new followers this week. And I'm like, did you even like thank them? Like introduce yourself, say, hey, thanks for the follow. Just checked out your account. Love what you do. Would love to learn a little bit more. Like, I mean, that's an opportunity. Someone just followed you. So that's an opportunity. Reach out. Also make sure that you also respond to any DMs that maybe people get back to you on. Make sure you check all inboxes because that's important. And then leverage other groups that may have your ideal audience where you're consistently providing value, not just why me, look at me, but like, engaging in those groups where your target audience may be. And then also leverage social for great social listening that can create content ideas because you'll start to hear what people are asking. And so doing these requires zero video editing, zero content creation, and it is the single piece of the strategy that even if you have a perfect social strategy, if you don't do this part, it's not going to be optimized as it could because social media is meant to be social. And so if you've ever wondered even why you have like the same people that always show up at the top on your stories and you're like, why am I always seeing Deb? She's always up there when I follow 5,000 people. It's because you guys have DM'd or you guys comment on each other's post. And so it's going to show you more of the content of those that they think you have a relationship with. So then my question to you guys is, who do you want to be seen by? Who are your ideal relationships? Who are the people that maybe you just had a listing appointment with that you need to add to your favorites so that they feel uniquely seen by you? Because we know that most people aren't liking and commenting. So why not make that your competitive advantage? That's almost better brand awareness showing up in their notifications because they see you over and over and over when they may not always see your post, but they see your name and your brand because that's, word association. So um, I always say this is like the disclaimer to the 3-step process of ideation, creation, and then distribution. So I just wanted to go over that part a little bit since we were talking about, the comments and the engagement. So we've talked about where to focus. We've talked about ideation and building out your content calendar. I do want to highlight that, when I say Facebook or Instagram, there are multiple different features that have different benefits. So it's not just, maybe one post because you could have a broadcast channel. You could utilize notes. We should all have a link in our bio because we should be optimizing conversion and getting people to, join our email list. But for explosive growth, like if you're really serious about growing on social, this is the cocktail mixture that you would need. 3 to 8 stories per day. It's like the day in the life of what it's like to be you. These are the things that only last for 24 hours. There's no real strategy to it other than it's like the behind the scenes footage where people can build that know, like, and trust factor about you. It doesn't have to be perfectly aesthetically appealing because it's not going on your feed. It's not lasting forever. But this is what deepens relationships and can spark conversation. 1 to 3 reels per week, 1 to 2 carousel posts per week. Most don't realize on Instagram, if you go to your explore feed right now, I I would bet you $1 million right now, you probably will see more carousel posts in your explore feed than reels. Doesn't mean you don't do reels, but it doesn't mean you only do video. It's a cocktail mixture, no different than like a credit score and different credit types. We like revolving accounts as long as they're not maxed out, and then maybe like a mortgage and an installment loan. So there's a cocktail mixture there. Same thing with social. So your single images about 3 to 5 a week. Most forget about live, like going live once or twice a month. I know for some it can be scary, but again, people have more grace for your production of lives, and it also makes it feel genuine. They feel like they're a part of like your tribe and your community. And that is really important. That is where social is headed. Is it's less about influencers, it's kind of back to the basics for them where it's more about connection and community. People want to feel like they belong to something. So what do you stand for? So when you're thinking of ideation right before creation, I want you to consider like how many video posts are you going to do a week? Like make that decision. We have 6 weeks left of the year. What is realistic for you? Could we all do at least a market update every Monday utilizing green screen? I think we could. I think that's an easier one. Could we all tell a story? Probably could. So again, you can't eat an elephant in one bite, but give yourself some action items after this of, I know where I should be spending more of my time. Those engagement strategies I would do on Facebook and Instagram, since those are both in the giants. Okay, you can't really do it on YouTube. It's not great for, like DMs and stuff. But then how diverse is your current content? Are you hitting all of these benefits where if you want discovery, post reels. If you want connection, utilize DMs. If you're nurturing those that are already following you, you do feed post. So ideation, creation, which we kind of already talked about with the time block every Monday. That's your non-negotiable appointment that you will then create content. And the most important kind of steps to this is, do you have a hook? And the hook goes on the front. And I'll show you even Brandon's account of a little tip that I gave him right before this call, or you guys can schedule a meeting with Brandon. He can go over some of the things that I specifically showed him on his. But a hook is like 90% of it. Who does it serve? What specific problem does it solve? 4 and 5 is really important. Is it save worthy? Like, I can't tell you how many generic Happy Veterans Day posts I recently saw that I'm like, does that provide any value? Everyone using like the same basic Canva template, Happy Veterans Day. Instead, make a more emotional, compelling post that's like, we did the ones with the soldiers coming home because like coming home is a big deal for like that meaning of home. Like that was kind of like a play on words while also acknowledging not all soldiers get to come home, fortunately. But that post had no value for most because it was just, it was like a to-do item that you guys checked off. So is it save worthy? Is it share worthy? And then is it simple to understand? Because we want to create more value, not more noise. So it's not just posting because I'm told I have to post. Everything should be positioned for value. And then the last step is the distribution. And this is the scheduling tool that I was talking about, where you can be everywhere every day without physically having to be. So what our tool does is it allows you to just drag and drop your post on whatever day of the week you want, and you could plan it out for the whole year if you wanted. But it has AI to read, like, is this a short video or a long video? Long caption, no hashtags, with hashtags, carousel post, single image post, and the AI will synthesize all of your data and it will auto post for you on each platform based off when your audience is most active. Because most aren't looking at their insights and don't know when is the best time to post because that takes time. So for $99 a month, or I think it's like $8.99 for the year, if you pay for a year in advance, you get a way to distribute and you can click all mediums. There's unlimited posts, unlimited groups. It will give you even recommendations. It gives you, I really like the social inbox because I can see all my inboxes on a dashboard. Um, but that is your 3-step process when it comes to creating content. You've got to have a plan. You've got to have a systematic way to create your idea list. Got a time block for the creation. Make sure you take into account the different types of content you can post, and then your distribution. How are you going to get it out there? So that was a lot of information. Any questions or anything that you want to ask Brandon or Zoe or anyone else on the call? I mean, I could talk for weeks if you wanted me to.
No, I think probably one of the biggest takeaways from this actually came in the very beginning when you were talking about using social as an extension of your CRM. So if you're making those posts on a scheduled basis, and this is something like this is why I've been talking to you and what I kind of need to get into, is then you're staying in touch with people as opposed to just messages that say, hey, just checking in on you, like that isn't really adding any value or anything like that. And you talked about kind of like, hey, how much business are you losing? Like how many meetings did you go on for whatever it is, listing appointments, buyers appointments, and of those people that you talked to, how many ended up using another realtor, and how much of that could you have kept with a different follow-up system and your CRM making that part of it? Hey, they're following you now. If you're following them, they'd probably feel pretty guilty if they used another realtor, right,
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
that. And I mean, that's a big part of what we talk about with people anyways. Like, hey, if you're going to go into a listing appointment, let's give you a digital CMA where you can show them how you're going to cover appraisal gaps and stuff like that. So even if they are interviewing multiple people, they're still going to choose to work with you. And then having them on social and staying in touch with them that way is just like an additional point. Like, yeah, talk to 10 people for all I care. You're going to use me anyways. They're not doing
Right.
what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I think that was kind of like the biggest takeaway for me, because even in my CRM, I've built it out so it's personal. It looks like I, took the time to say, hey, how are you? Sorry,
Good.
let me turn this off, and that sort of thing. But after a certain amount of time, there's only so much you can follow up and say like that and plan in advance,
Right.
like, hey, this is what we're going to talk about. Where after a certain point, it's like, yeah, hey, I know you didn't find a house yet, just checking in on you.
Yeah.
Everything good, whatever. And if instead you're staying in touch through things that are relevant because you're building it constantly. Like your CRM, you can't constantly edit and change, what
Right.
that messaging is going to look like. So for me, that was the biggest thing is like change your social media into more of like a CRM, like
Because
relationship
that's where the
manager.
attention is. I mean, when you think about it, how many emails do we get in a day? How many
Totally.
texts? But like if you're spending 4 hours a day on social, even all your like even you, Brandon, you could have a broadcast channel that's for all your pre-approved buyers and it's only them. And imagine for your agent partners, every coming soon that they have, like if you could share that coming soon in your little pool of hungry sharks that all want a house that will
Yeah.
help your agents, drive traffic. It's like this is a group of pre-approved clients just waiting to find their perfect home. So it's like there's ways you can leverage the platform as just a distribution channel that is where the eyeballs are, you know?
Yeah. And I
And
think
even
I
like
think the
the
other part
email,
is go ahead.
I was gonna say, even within your email strategy, like if you email every Friday, maybe to your database or your referral sources, hyperlink a social post because every post has its own URL. You could hyperlink it and say, hey, did you, see this post made? Click here, which then gets people to go to your hub and will potentially follow you. So there's ways to like repurpose a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking, shoot, what was I?
You said the protecting your database and the broadcast channel and the CRM
Yeah, but
listings
it's
coming
okay. I
soon.
kind of lost it. It's okay. It's not that important, obviously. But
I did.
that I think is the biggest part is that's going to keep people speaking with you. Oh, that was what I was going to say. The other thing that I like about social is it's voluntary. Like if I'm sending an outbound email, text, whatever, they don't necessarily want that. But if they posted something on their story, they're inviting you to message them or to give a heart or whatever it is.
Mhm.
So it's like it's more of like a welcome conversation as opposed to sending out an outbound email and hoping that that is valuable to them. If you see that they're specifically talking about something, even if it's completely unrelated to business, you can keep that conversation going and stay top of mind. And I think that's what I like most about it. And you kind of talked about this, the difference between sales and marketing, right? In marketing, you're not really like pushing anything on them. And in social, they're actually like giving things to you that they want to talk about.
Right. And usually you let them do, like, if you can just become the biggest fan of the people you want to be your fan, that's the best way to start any relationship. And, you know, sometimes people, they may reach out, but then they're not always ready. And then if you don't have that follow-up system and you're not staying top of mind, because even if, say, you do have a follow-up and it's all emails, people delete emails,
Yeah.
or if it's canned messages that you used 2 years ago that's automated from your CRM, that's not necessarily relevant. They position you as someone who's not relevant, and then they just delete because it's not valuable. And so really getting, studying your clients. That's what I mean by like coming obsessed with maintaining your relationships of every lead and every client, because that's future referrals, but also knowing the data of like who are the people buying or selling right now. I think we generally like to assume that it's typically first-time homebuyers. Like we think it's always millennials, but according to the data, like the data will show, and every March, NAR comes out with a new report, but like the average age of the top seller was your younger boomer, which should make sense because they have more equity in their home. They're probably less impacted by rate and payment because they don't have as much student loan debt, probably. But then the second largest demographic selling was your older boom. So your baby boomers actually are the ones that are selling. If you're looking for listings, it's like these are probably the people to go after, which should impact your marketing. So are you using maybe older demographics in your post? And then this tells you why they chose why they decided to sell, like what was the motivation, the drive behind it, which is important. Everyone who's selling, I want y'all to get good at filling in the dots. I'm selling my home because dot dot dot. What's the reason? It could be, and if we look at the boomers, the highest one was to move closer to friends or family. So some of the messaging may be, hey, is do your parents want to move closer to you if you're targeting millennials? Or, hey, are you tired of being so far from your grandkids? Like, this is how you use the data to your advantage. Same thing with home buyers. This was the largest demographic of home buyers. It was Gen X. But if you combine the percentages of boomers, it was also boomers, which should make sense. They were the ones selling their home. These people, they're living paycheck to paycheck with inflated rents and mass student loan debt. But also here was their motivating. So if you look at what was driving that decision, it was that desire to own a home. When you look at the boomers, it was to be closer to friends and family. Then it was retirement. So it's like use the data to help you craft more relevant marketing, and then also know like what do they value. So from the buy side, this is what they value most from an agent. Could I get these values from your social media? Would I feel this? Do you prove some of this stuff? Like, how do you help with price negotiations, the terms of a sale? This is what they value most. What about on the sell side? Honesty, integrity, responsiveness, knowledge of the process. It's like, so they choose you usually based, like, that decision has to be made twice. It's got to feel right and it's got to logically be right. Because there's a lot of times when you're like, this is the most logical decision. Why aren't they picking this? This is hands down what they should do. And you yourself have probably had this exact situation where you're like, it just didn't feel right. So it's got to feel right, both in the heart and the head before they will make that decision. So how are you helping them feel safe and secure and confident and clear of their options? And does that come across in your social feed? That's important.
Yeah. One thing I am gonna do is obviously we need to talk more from the beginning of the conversation because I do want to implement a lot of this, and then people can kind of watch the change in my posts themselves.
Yeah.
But also, like if people were into, I know you touched on your on like the scheduling tool that you have.
Hmm.
Just for people to find out more about kind of what you do and how you do this so that people don't have to become an expert in social media. And then I'll link that to people. And I'm also
Okay.
gonna, because I'm gonna send a follow-up email to everybody that registered and then some other agents that I know too. Um, and I'll just basically like give some like timeline breaks. So like, hey, I'll look and say, okay, between this time Deb covered this topic and whatever to make it
Mm.
easy for people to follow. But I also want people to be able to talk to you directly.
So if you click the link in my bio, and guys, watch how easy this is. You click the link in your bio and you use Linktree's free. It's a micro website. It makes it very easy for people to find what they're looking for, and you can change these however often you want. But if you're interested in my scheduling tool, it's here. If you want a strategy call, it's here. If you are interested in our services, it's here. But you guys know where to find me. I ain't hard to find, right? That's what Dion would say.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I mean, I appreciate you taking the time. Zoe, I don't know if you had some additional questions or anything you wanted to her to touch on, but yeah, I mean, the main thing for me is like an extension to CRM and getting theme days with the content pillars is I think going to make a huge difference. And just because like every day I'm like, what the hell should I talk about today? You know, it's not.
Yeah, because it's so overwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any questions, but I really like the idea of like having that go-to idea list, because I feel like in the moment I'm like, oh yeah, and then like, later on you get busy and things come up and you're like, crap, what do I need to talk about now?
Yeah.
So having an ongoing thing is awesome. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's just creating that consistent workflow of how do you consume content in a way that helps you generate ideas. And just so you know, like on, Instagram or TikTok, whatever you like or save, you can refer back to on the platform on those Mondays, because it's a different mindset. Like when you're creating, you have to really be in that creative zone. And there's days you may not be feeling it. Like you're like, you know what? I've been consuming content and studying, and I've been doing mental gymnastics. I'm not feeling being in front of a camera. But you've got a time block so that you at least do that appointment. Otherwise, you could be creating this idea list and then you never make the time to actually record. So we do have video editing packages where a lot of our clients will just record very raw. And I mean, raw. There's sometimes where I'm like, I think you have Tourette's with all the curse words that are coming out with these, like, but we take out all of that. We make it look great. Some of them we just edit, we send back to you, you post, or sometimes people use our scheduling tool and they post it, or they're like, I know if left on my own, I won't post. So we need you to edit and post for us. So, we have several different packages, and I allow people to upgrade, downgrade, cancel at any time. I don't do contracts. I've never wanted people to feel stuck or captive. Like if we aren't exceeding all expectations, we make it so easy for you to just log into you don't even have to email me. You just log into your portal and you can cancel. So there's no shame. Like we just want to provide value and really connect people to those who care, and provide great service.
Awesome.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Deb, for taking the time.
Yeah.
I know you're super busy, and I'm surprised you weren't already giving a talk somewhere else or doing something else. So I appreciate you taking the time, and I'm excited to kind of get this out to as many people as I can, so they can take advantage of the same things you just taught. And yeah, me and you will talk very soon.
Well, can I also say that for those listening, give yourself credit. Like even you, Zoe, like you could take a picture of your time, something that you've learned, tag us, because that helps Brandon too, but give yourself credit. And even if you're an agent listening, like show and prove that you actually care about learning up-to-date marketing strategies, because you understand most sellers ask about how are you going to market the property. So this is a prime example of something you could take a photo and say, learning from the best in the biz about, modern marketing strategies, whatever it is, with my go-to lender partner, Brandon. That way, we can share it on our stories. And then who knows, maybe people will start to follow you just because we share it on our story. So, I appreciate you, Brandon. I hope those listening give you at least a shot and send you their next referral. I always say send the next two, because the first one could be lucky, could be like an easy loan. But I do appreciate what you're doing for the space and for going above and beyond than just the status quo and really caring about your business partner. So thank you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And again, thanks so much for the time. Honestly, it's very appreciated, and I'll get this out to as many people as I can as soon as the recording downloads. So I appreciate it.
Yes. All right. Take care. Bye, Zoe.
Thanks. See you, Zoe.